Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Morgan. This is my channel Pisces Paperbacks, and today I want to talk to you about some short books you can read during the shortest month of the year. Before we begin, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm wearing a turtleneck. I've been trying to get into turtlenecks. I really like how they look with sweaters, and now that I like knit sweaters and stuff, I feel like I should get into that. I've never really liked how they feel up around my neck, but I kind of like this like Princess Diana lead in a 90s rom-com vibe that it's giving, so I'm into it. I also figured out a way to deal with my extremely bright light, like filming lights that I have, and I bought a white sheet from Goodwill and I just threw the sheet on top of the light and I think it looks pretty good. So let me know your thoughts. I know there's gonna be like 1,000,001 people doing this style of recommendation video, but you know what? I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring. I wanna be included. I have 10 books written here on this paper. All are under 280 pages because there's 28 days in February, which I think is very cute. And I want to talk to you about them. I should also say that with one exception, none of these are romance novels. I obviously read mostly romance novels, but I feel like romance readers know where to go to find short books. That's not like a need they're looking for. That's not a niche they're trying to fill. So these are all fiction novels, or I think there's 1 or 2 short stories that I think you might enjoy. So starting from the top with the shortest book, working to the longest, the first thing I want to talk to you about is a short story by Yoon Lee called Beyond the Dragon's Gate. I wrote down that it's 30 pages long, but I think it's 20 pages long. So it's a 20-page short story that has to do with AI and spaceships and is also kind of an examination of dysphoria and gender. It's a trans author, and I really enjoyed this short story. I haven't read too many short stories, so I'm not like the best person to give recommendations on this, but I enjoyed this short story so much that I then almost like a month, not even a month later, went and got one of this author's full-length novels from the library and read it. So the short story to novel conversion was 100% for this author. The next thing I think you might like is The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. So as we all know, this is the iconic author of Gone Girl, Dark Places, and Sharp Objects. Those are her only 3 full-length thrillers. But if you're interested, you can read The Grown Up, which is a 64-page 1-hour-long audiobook. That's how I read it. Story about a con woman. Through a series of events, she comes into contact with this woman who believes her house is haunted, and she's like, yeah, I can de-haunt your house. I can totally do that, because she's a con woman, and it just, from there, goes off the walls with, like, a creepy teenager and weird family dynamics in this weird fucking house, and I really liked it. It has an ambiguous ending, and I think that it was very enjoyable of a listen. I still remember it. It's been like 4 years. The next book I'm going to mention is the only romance on this list, and that is The Craft of Love by EE Ottoman. If you don't know EE Ottoman, he writes beautiful, interesting, queer historical romance, and this is no exception. So The Craft of Love is about, I don't remember if he's a carpenter or like a blacksmith or something, but the main character is a craftsman. He is a trans man, or however that concept is kind of understood in early 1800s America, like New York, and he meets a quilt maker, I think, or a seamstress, something like that, and it is about their romance, and it is so beautiful. I loved it so much, and it is only 107 pages, so it's a quick read. And I technically didn't put it on this list, but if you're interested in another beautiful queer historical romance, you can also read The Companion by EE Ottoman, which I didn't like quite as much, but I think has the better cover, and it is a trans, polyamorous, bisexual historical romance set in like the 1910s in upstate New York, and it is delightful. Next up, clocking in at 152 pages, All Systems Red by Martha Wells is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries. It is a series of mostly novellas. There's 1 full-length novel. I haven't read that yet. I've only read the first 2 novellas in the series, but this is such a fun, funny, heartwarming, interesting sci-fi series about Murderbot. It is a security unit who kind of hacked its own programming so that it could do whatever it wanted and not have to listen to instructions and just like watch sitcoms all day. And in this first book, All Systems Red, it finds itself in a murder mystery situation with this group of human scientists that it's supposed to be protecting. And it is so funny and interesting, and I love it so much. I loved the second book as well. This is like 5 stars, so highly recommend. You should read it in February. The next book I want to talk to you about is a translated work of fiction at around 170 something pages, and that is Kim Jiyoung, born 1982. This book is interesting in that it doesn't really have like a traditional plot structure. It's more that it follows Kim Jiyoung's life from her childhood into adulthood, examining sexism in South Korean society, like throughout her entire life and the different stages of her life. She's meant to be like the most perfectly statistically average woman. And so this book is an exploration of what the average South Korean woman experiences throughout her lifetime. And there are footnotes from like real studies, like in the real world, like actual real world studies that are footnotes in this fiction novel. And it was very interesting. I wouldn't say that, I think I gave it like 3.5 stars because it's not super fun to read because it's kind of depressing, but it's also fascinating. And I didn't grow up in South Korea. Shocking, I know. But it's just interesting to explore that culture as well, because sexism is unfortunately pretty universal. So that one is more literary. And actually, the next one I want to talk about is pretty literary as well, and that is Weather by Jenny Offill. So this book is 208 pages. It's first to break the 200-page mark on this list, but it is written in a way that makes it much faster to read than most traditionally written 100-page books. And that's because it is written in these short, almost like paragraph length vignettes of like inner monologue, stream of consciousness. Sometimes these little page long or paragraph long vignettes are a connected thought process or scene, but often they are just individual thoughts or reflections on that individual topic of each paragraph. So this is about a main character. I don't know if she's an unnamed narrator, but the main character. And I believe the synopsis that the book gives is that she gets a job answering the emails to this podcast that's hosted by like an old professor of hers. And it's a podcast about climate change, and the emails are becoming more and more alarming and seem to be more and more often coming from like climate change doomsday prepper type people. And she's answering these emails and learning about climate change and climate disaster and what may or may not be coming in the future, while also in her real life the world is experiencing a climate disaster and also political breakdown. And so it was very interesting. I think it possibly is written to parallel some of the events of America in 2016. I don't want to get into it, but I think that was there. And I really thought this book was fascinating. I read it very, very quickly, and I definitely recommend it if you're interested in that kind of area of literary fiction. Then into something different, a young adult fantasy novel. Pet by Akwaeke Emezi is about a young girl named Jam who lives in Lucille, a city where there is no evil. At some point in the past, they went through this whole thing and bad people and social ills were eliminated. And it's very important now that these children are taught that there were monsters in the past, but there are no monsters in Lucille. Monsters as in like bad people who hurt others. And so Jam, a young girl, is, living in this world very happily until one of her mother's paintings comes to life and a monster named Pet says, no, there is a monster in Lucille and it's living in your best friend's home. She and her friend kind of investigate and are trying to figure out how to deal with and confront this evil. And I really liked this book. I feel like it was imaginative, it had a lot of heart, and it addressed really serious topics in a way that didn't feel condescending to a young reader. You know what I mean? This book, the crux of it is child abuse is happening in the home, and it's not described it doesn't happen on page. It's not described in depth, but it's handled very seriously in a way that I think was very well done, while also being a very enjoyable read. So I really highly recommend this, and it's only like 200 pages, so you can read this in a day. The next thing I'd like to recommend is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal, El-Motar and Max Gladstone. This is not going to be a super quick read. I'm going to be so real. Not that it's super long. It's like 210 pages, but it is dense. Not in a very lyrical way, a very metaphor-heavy way where you could just really skim through it quickly because it's poetry, but it's also like sometimes you gotta slow down if you really want to understand what's happening. And I think that slowing the pace down and really understanding what's happening is so worth it. This is a beautiful, beautiful science fiction love story through time. Basically, it is about Red and Blue, who are agents on the opposite side of this time war. Basically, at some point in the past, there was a split in the timeline where Earth either goes into like a techno future where people are all part cyborg robots, or a green Earth future where people are like connected to plants. And so Red and Blue are each agents from these times who go back in time to try to manipulate world events to turn the favor of the future in the direction of their respective world. You know what I mean? And while they are kind of going back and forth and battling in the past, they start leaving notes for each other and letters. And through these letters and through these notes, they kind of strike up a friendship and then a relationship. And it's so beautiful, it's so metaphorical and emotional, and I absolutely adored it. And I think you would too. Next, something spooky I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Reid. I read this in one night in a vlog that you can watch. This is a really quick horror novel about an unnamed narrator going to have dinner with her boyfriend's family for the first time, and while they're on the drive there, she's like, I don't know if this is going to work out. I think I might have to end things. And it is very unsettling. Things change. Things aren't as she remembers them, and they kind of are trapped in this snowstorm situation, so it's also very claustrophobic. And this book freaked me the fuck out, and I really, really loved it. I haven't seen the movie. I don't know if I'm ever going to watch the movie. I feel like some people say the movie's not very good, but this is definitely good. And if you're looking for something quick and spooky to read in one of the coldest months of the year, well, snowed in horror novel right here for you. And the last book on this list that I want to talk about is Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. This is 260 something pages, but a very short audiobook, which is how I listen to it. And I really, really loved this. It's a contemporary literary fiction about a young woman, and she is basically reconciling religion and science in her life. She grew up very religious. She really believed in God and had a very religious mother. She spent a lot of time in the church. But she also is a neuroscience student studying the effects of depression and addiction because she had an older brother who passed away of an opioid addiction. And through these flashbacks of her life as well as scenes in her present, you kind of learn about how she became the woman that she is. I thought this was so beautiful. I thought it felt like it could have been a memoir. That's how tenderly and emotional the scenes were, the history, talking about the main character's childhood. It felt so real, the way that you can both love and resent a parent like that. And I just thought this book was fantastic. I really highly recommend it. And I think that's going to be it. That's all 10 books I wrote down of short novels you can read during February, the shortest month of the year. I'm definitely planning on maybe doing like a short books reading vlog. I don't know what the plan is, but that would be fun. So let me know if you've read any of these and if you enjoyed them. And please let me know if you're planning on reading any. I would love to hear your thoughts. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you guys next time. Bye!